Welcome to the deep dive. Usually when we talk about urban infrastructure, there is this underlying expectation of heavy machinery.
Right, like pouring concrete and all that.
Exactly. You picture laying down asphalt, you look at a map, you draw a rigid line, and you just sort of pave over whatever happens to be in the way to get from point A to point B.
Yeah, it's a mindset of conquering the landscape. I mean, for the last century, building a modern city essentially meant engineering the nature right out of it.
Totally.
We walled off rivers, we flattened hills, and we just treated the natural environment as an obstacle to be overcome.
But step into the world of modern ecological urban planning, and that whole concrete and steel mindset is, well, it's turned entirely on its head.
Right, absolutely.
We are now looking at a kind of infrastructure that doesn't pave over nature, but actually uses the wild, unpredictable, moving elements of the earth as the road itself.
It's a complete paradigm shift, you know? We're moving from conquering the landscape to actually collaborating with it.
Yeah, and to see what that collaboration actually looks like for you, we are looking at a late May 2026 project out of the Verdun borough in Montreal.
Right.
The project is called La Route Bleue, the Blue Route, and we're pulling the details today from a really comprehensive publication, which is available in both text and audio over at wikiresidence.ca and infodrone.ca.
It's a fantastic breakdown.
It really is. And on the surface, you might read the headline and think, oh, great, they made a nice place to go kayaking. But okay, let's unpack this because it is so much more than a recreational story. It is a masterclass in modern urban planning.
I completely agree. It's rare to see a public project that manages to perfectly synthesize public health, real estate economics, and biodiversity conservation.
Because usually those clash, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Historically, those three things are just at war with each other. If you want to build and generate revenue, you destroy biodiversity.
Right.
And if you want to protect nature, you halt economic development. But the launch of this Verdun sector proves they can actually feed into one another.
So let's start with the physical reality of what they've actually built on the St. Lawrence River because, honestly, the scale is wild.
Oh, it's massive.
Yeah, the strategic vision outlined in the documentation is all about reconnecting Montreal's population with its island nature. They basically identified 137 kilometers of public shorelines across the island of Montreal to use as a massive canvas.
Which is so necessary when you consider the historical amnesia of the city.
Historical amnesia.
Yeah, I mean, Montreal's an island, but for decades, heavy industrialization, shipping lanes, and urban sprawl they effectively walled the citizens off from the water.
Oh, wow.
You could literally live your entire life on the island and never meaningfully interact with the river because it was treated as an industrial corridor rather than a civic space.
Yeah.
So this strategic vision is about reversing that amnesia.
Right. But they didn't just point to the river and say, have at it, Montreal, They
Right.
designed three very specific, distinct routes.
Yes, very carefully planned.
When I was going through the launch details for Verdun, the mechanics of it immediately reminded me of the color-coded trail system at a ski resort. You've got your green circles, your blue squares, and your double black diamonds.
Honestly, the ski resort is the perfect lens for this.
Yeah.
Because just like a mountain, a wild river has its own topography.
Right.
The water behaves entirely differently depending on the depth, the riverbed, and the current. So they had to map that invisible topography to create those routes.
Let's walk through the three of them because the mechanical differences are just fascinating.
Let's do it.
First, you have the beginner route, the green circle. This is a 5-kilometer linear path stretching from the natatorium down to the Point Nord of Nuns Island.
Right.
And it is linear, which means it likely skirts the shoreline where the fluid dynamics are, the calmest. It's perfect for someone who has literally never held a paddle.
Exactly. It allows novices to get their bearings without fighting the heady central currents of the St. Lawrence.
Yeah. Then you step up to the intermediate route, the blue square. This is the tour of Nuns Island. It's a 10-kilometer loop, but now the environment shifts dramatically.
Oh, big time.
The documentation notes this route requires special attention because you're entering whitewater territory with strong currents. I mean, 10 kilometers of fighting unpredictable water is a serious physical undertaking.
It really is. That requires endurance, but more importantly, it requires the paddler to know how to read the water.
Right.
You have to understand how eddies form and how the current shifts around the bends of the island.
The contrast with the advanced route, the L Rock tour, is what completely threw me.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
I naturally assumed the double black diamond route would be a grueling, 30-kilometer marathon, but it is surprisingly short.
Yep.
It's only 700 meters long. It is essentially a sprint track.
It is a highly technical loop reserved exclusively for seasoned experts. And the reason it's so short is due to its dangerous proximity to the rapids.
Right, the rapids.
The hydrodynamic forces in that 700-meter stretch are just intense. You aren't testing your endurance over a long distance. You're testing your split-second reaction time against immense power.
Which begs a massive logistical question for me.
Yeah.
You have a 10-kilometer intermediate marathon, a 700-meter advanced sprint track near dangerous rapids, and a 5-kilometer beginner zone. How does a city safely manage such incredibly diverse skill levels on the exact same wild, moving river?
Sounds impossible, right?
Yeah. Like, if I'm a beginner, what stops me from just drifting into the 700-meter death trap?
What's fascinating here is the concept the source material calls marked nautical infrastructure. This is the genius of the design.
Okay.
They didn't just publish a map on a website and hope people figure it out. They physically decoded the river using specialized buoys, visual shoreline landmarks, and submerged markers. They fully curated the experience.
So they are essentially painting lanes on the water.
Effectively, yes. Think about an unmarked river with known dangerous rapids. Only the absolute elite, risk-taking experts will ever touch it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The average person is far too intimidated by the invisible dangers. But by physically delineating that 5-kilometer safe zone with clear, readable nautical markers, you remove the fear.
Wow.
You invite novices and families onto the water safely.
You haven't tamed the river, you've just made it legible to the general public.
Exactly. And crucially, you haven't ruined the river for the seasoned paddlers either.
Right, because they still have their section.
Right. By carving out that intense, highly technical 700-meter loop and marking it clearly as an expert-only zone, you share a single natural resource among vastly different demographics without them ever colliding.
That's brilliant. And here's the catch. Building out a 15-kilometer aquatic ski resort creates a whole new set of challenges.
Of funding.
Exactly. It solves the access problem, but it creates a massive funding problem. You can't just put up a swim-at-your-own-risk sign.
No, definitely not.
Mapping invisible topography, installing specialized hydrodynamic buoys, and building safe entry points, all of that requires serious capital, which forces us to ask, who actually pays to decode a river?
Well, the financial structure behind Route Bleue is highly collaborative, which tells you a lot about how many different sectors see long-term value in this kind of infrastructure.
Yeah, looking at the macro context, this Verdun launch is just one piece of a much larger historical effort called the Greater Montreal's Green and Blue Network.
Right.
Specifically, the Blue Experience component of that network mobilized over $42 million in joint investment.
That's a huge number.
It is. You have the government of Quebec, the Montreal metropolitan community, and various participating cities all pooling their capital. But the detail that really jumped out at me from the Verdun documents was the involvement of the Ministry of Education.
Oh, yeah, that's a key part of it.
The local project was driven by Sport et Loisirs de l'Île de Montréal, but they received a specific financial contribution from education. Why is the Ministry of Education funding a kayaking route?
Because when you decode a river, you are also building an outdoor classroom. This isn't just about recreation.
Oh, I see.
The Ministry of Education's involvement points to the experiential learning potential. You are creating a safe, marked environment where schools can bring physical education classes or biology students out onto the water.
That's amazing.
They're funding the educational infrastructure, the training, the youth access, the ecological signage that really turns a wild river into a community asset.
And the economic impacts of that asset are incredibly direct. The creation of these marked access points immediately stimulates the local adventure tourism industry.
Absolutely.
It drives up sports equipment rentals, which then increases foot traffic for the local cafes and businesses near the launch points. And then there is the real estate angle.
Always a big factor.
Right. The source specifically notes that proximity to these quality leisure infrastructures directly contributes to maintaining and appreciating property values in the surrounding residential neighborhoods.
It acts as a massive economic engine. When you take a neglected shoreline and turn it into a vibrant public space, the adjacent land naturally becomes more desirable.
Okay, but I have to push back hard here.
Go for it.
What does this actually mean for the everyday resident of Montreal? If we were pouring $42 million of public money into an infrastructure project that explicitly appreciates riverside property values, is this project truly democratizing the river?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. Or is the city just using taxpayer dollars to build a really nice moat for wealthy riverside homeowners?
hmm
I mean, if property values skyrocket, the original residents just get priced out.
Yeah, that is the defining tension in almost every modern urban renewal project. The line between revitalization and gentrification is incredibly thin.
Yeah.
But if we look at how the Verdun project is mechanically structured,
Hmm.
it deliberately attempts to solve this paradox.
Hmm.
The text explicitly defines La Route Bleue as an infrastructure of democratization.
But how does it achieve that in a practical sense? I mean, how do you stop it from just being a playground for the rich?
By breaking the private monopoly on the shoreline. Think about the old paradigm. Without public access points, the only people who can launch a kayak into the St. Lawrence are the people wealthy enough to own the land touching the water.
Oh, true. The river effectively belongs to private backyards.
Exactly. So the access point is the equalizer. By investing public funds to build marked, safe, and entirely public entry points, the city reclaims the shoreline for everyone.
Right.
Furthermore, by actively supporting the local sports equipment rental industry, they remove the second barrier to entry.
Equipment costs.
Yes, you don't need to own a $2,000 kayak or waterfront home to participate. You just take the metro to Verdun, rent a board, and access the exact same blue space as the millionaire living on the shore.
Wow. Okay.
It proves that economic gain like bustling local cafes and rising property values does not have to be mutually exclusive with public accessibility.
So the $42 million isn't just buying buoys, it is buying public equity in the river. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's an investment in the public.
And the scale of this ambition is staggering. Greater Montreal has identified a potential of 315 kilometers of navigable waterways for this blue network. They anticipate attracting tens of thousands of enthusiasts annually.
Which introduces an entirely new problem.
Does it?
Yeah. You break the monopoly, you invite tens of thousands of people to the shoreline, and suddenly you risk replacing industrial pollution with recreational pollution.
Oh, the paradox of loving nature to death.
Exactly.
If you bring that many humans to a wild ecosystem, how do you protect the river from the humans?
Well, the documentation places a rigorous emphasis on safety and ecological education, which brings us to the physical design of the routes themselves.
The details on this are just fascinating. They didn't just mark out the deep water, they integrated dedicated rest areas and specific caution zones directly on the water.
Right.
And the most critical instruction given to users is the mandate to navigate eco-responsibly, which notably includes bypassing the small islands.
Yeah, that's super important.
Paddlers are instructed to steer clear of them entirely because those small, seemingly insignificant islands serve as crucial protected nesting areas for local wildlife.
It is a brilliant approach to conservation, really, because it relies on physical design rather than literal enforcement.
I was wondering about that. How do you put a keep off the grass sign on moving water?
Right.
Like, how does active mobility, thousands of kayakers and paddleboarders, actually coexist with an undisturbed natural habitat? It feels like those two things should naturally clash.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of urban planning, it reveals the core philosophy of what makes La Route Bleue so innovative. Think about the traditional approach to environmental conservation.
Okay.
The old way was simply keep out, put up a chain link fence.
Yeah.
The assumption was that humans are inherently bad for nature, so we must separate them entirely.
But if you just put up a no trespassing sign, people will inevitably sneak in, usually off trail, and leave trash everywhere because they don't understand the ecosystem.
Precisely. What they are doing on the St. Lawrence is entirely different. By setting clear physical boundaries, using the marked nautical infrastructure, the city isn't just protecting biodiversity, they're actively educating the public in real time.
Wow.
They map the currents and place the suggested bypass routes where the water naturally carries the paddler away from the fragile nesting grounds. So when a paddler follows a marked channel that veers wide of a small island, they are learning about the ecosystem they are sitting in.
So they become active participants in the conservation effort. The infrastructure itself is acting as the shield for the wildlife.
Yeah. The source emphasizes that modern, intelligent urban planning inevitably involves the harmonious integration of the social economy and blue spaces.
Right.
You cannot just lock nature away in a vault and expect citizens to care about it. You have to integrate it into the heart of the city's development. By putting people on the river, showing them the wildlife from a safe distance, and giving them the exact physical channels to avoid disturbing it, They develop a vested interest in keeping that water clean.
It is experiential education at a massive scale.
And it creates a sustainable loop.
Yeah.
It ensures that as the adventure tourism industry grows, the very natural heritage that is driving that economic boom is protected by the same infrastructure that enables the access.
That's incredible. When you zoom out and look at the whole picture we've painted today, Montreal's Route Bleue really is a masterclass in urban transformation.
It really is.
They took 137 kilometers of public shoreline, mobilized $42 million in joint investments, and merged all of that with strict ecological protections. The result isn't just a place to paddle. It is a cohesive aquatic playground that balances the safety of a beginner with the thrills of an expert.
Yeah.
It balances economic growth with the genuine public access and human recreation with vital wildlife conservation.
This case study redefines what urban infrastructure can look like, and that matters regardless of where you are tuning in from today.
Absolutely.
It proves that cities do not have to be defined forever by their asphalt and steel. They can reclaim their natural heritage. They can build alongside the environment rather than paving over it.
Right.
Public health, a booming local economy, and biodiversity aren't competing interests. They're interlocking pieces of a healthy, modern city.
We started by talking about infrastructure as pouring concrete and drawing rigid lines on a map. But maybe the best infrastructure is just learning how to read the water.
Love that.
So knowing that Greater Montreal identified 315 kilometers of potential waterways to build out this network, we'll take a look at your own city. Look past the highways, the industrial zones, and the skyscrapers.
Yeah.
What forgotten river, neglected lake, or ignored shoreline in your own backyard is just waiting to be transformed from a scenic backdrop into a vibrant, vital piece of urban life. Keep that in mind the next time you look at a map. Until next time.